What is up, guys? Welcome to my review of the new film by the Philippou Brothers called Bring Her Back. This is their sophomore film after the huge hit Talk to Me from a couple of years ago, a film that I really loved. It was actually my favorite horror film the year that it released. And so I was absolutely on pins and needles waiting for what these guys were going to do next. And luckily, I was able to walk into this film entirely blind. I did not know what the plot synopsis of this was. I did not watch a trailer. I didn't look at the poster. I just went on good faith from a hint that I had gotten from a friend that one of these little Cinemark secret screenings was going to show the film a little bit early, and it ended up being true. And the way that I'll describe the plot of this film to keep things extremely spoiler-free is that you have these two recently orphaned step-siblings that get adopted by this foster mother. And as they are staying in this house and adapting to this new situation, things start to seem a little off. And starting off with the positives for Bring Her Back, just like with Talk to Me, where I thought that was a really unique spin on a familiar subgenre dealing with, haunted spirits and the other world and possession more specifically, doing that in a way that I had never seen before. Bring Her Back has a very similar approach to reanimation. It has certain plot beats that if I was to write them out on paper would seem familiar. There's a motivation to the antagonistic character here that we've certainly seen in movies before that again would sound familiar if I said it out loud, but the way that Bring Her Back goes about it is in a very unique way. And I think that's incredibly refreshing. It's very difficult at this point in 2025 to come up with a wholly original idea. Even things that get praised for being wholly original are always pointed out as being somewhat inspired by or derivative of something else that was much more original in its time. And so I think it's interesting to take something where you just embrace the fact that we're doing something we've seen before, but the way that we're doing it is a way that you have not seen. And so it brings a really unique energy, and it brings a really unique path to go through the narrative with a film like this, just like it was with Talk to Me. I think all of the performances in this film are really good. Sally Hawkins is playing the foster mother here, and I think that she does an incredible job at being such a multi-layered character where there's always from Jump Street something a little bit off, a little bit quirky about her that you're not sure how comfortable you are with her. But at the same time, there's something that's very warm and welcoming about her. There's something that's kind of cool and playful. There's moments where she's very sinister and dark. And so I think that it was a really interesting performance to have a character like that that's able to go for so many different emotions and so many different tones, and even just the way that she interacts with different people in the movie. It's almost like she's putting on a different face for each individual person, and I think she totally sold all of that. You got Billy Barrett here as the older foster sibling, the brother named Andy, and he's essentially your lead of the film, and I thought that he was really good as well. He's a character that when the movie started, I wasn't really sure how much I was going to like him because you're kind of introduced to him as the problem child. Like he's the one that had the rough rap sheet. And I'm like, all right, is he going to be like that annoying, angsty teenager? And he wasn't that at all. He's very much this protective, sweet, caring older brother that certainly has a bit of a hard edge to him, but his main goal for his character arc as well as his life is just to protect his sister, who is vision impaired. And then you get to Sora Wong, who is playing that vision impaired sister Piper, and she actually has this impairment in real life. And I think the way that this actress was able to emote as her character without really being able to do a whole lot, not being able to really see even what was going on set when they were filming her, I thought it was totally captivating. And the way that they utilize her as a performer as well as her character in a situation like this where there's some fucked up shit going on, there's some really gnarly stuff that is right there for you to see, and she can't see any of it. And so she's in the middle of hell, literally, and can't really feel like that because she can't discern what's going on visually around her. That creates some really nice tense sequences, and it kind of makes you grip your seat a little bit as you want her to like get the hint, like, holy shit, you need to get out of where you're at right now. And she can't tell. She's just walking through a bunch of gnarly shit as if it's just a regular day in the office. And also creating scenarios where, when the shoe finally does drop and she does find herself in a situation where she knows things are very wrong, she also is debilitated by not being able to get out of there quickly and safely because she can't see where the fuck she's going. So it was a really interesting element there, not only just from a performance standpoint, but the way that they wrote and utilized the character to kind of intensify an already very grim and tense and bleak situation by having a character with this vision impairment. If the main thing that stood out to you and that you remember Talk to Me for were some of the very gnarly visuals of the kid slamming his face against the table or slamming his face against the floor in the hospital, and the way that the gore effects were utilized in that film, if that's what you want to see more of from the Philippou Brothers, they heard you and they deliver, because god damn, there are some gnarly ass things that happen in this film. I don't want to overhype it. It's not like it's going to, make you pass out in the theater or anything, like I'm sure somebody's already putting on Twitter, but it is definitely some images that will make you a little squirmish. It will make you cringe. It'll make you kind of grit yourself. You'll have that phantom pain where a certain piece of somebody's body is being mutilated and suddenly you feel it. You're like, oh God, oh no, no. And I really appreciate the fact that these guys clearly keep seemingly all of that practical. If they do use CGI, it's brilliantly integrated into here, but practical gore, when you're going for really squeamish effects, you're trying to actually sicken your audience, there's nothing better than practical. And so I love the fact that 2 movies in, these guys have stuck to that, and they do it extremely well. And just from a filmmaking standpoint, I think that these 2 brothers, Danny and Michael, I think are some of the most exciting new voices that we have in horror today, because 2 films in, I think their style, their sensibilities, what they go for is something that is really unique. It's really interesting. The way that they approach storytelling is a little unique, bringing a modernized spin to something very familiar. But even just visually as filmmakers, I think that they are very effective at getting across what their overall mission is with their film, whether they're trying to sicken you, whether they're trying to scare you, if they're trying to prey on some of your fears or your insecurities or whatever it is. They hit their target because of the way that they move the camera, the way that they establish certain shots. There is like this dichotomy of beautiful imagery and horribly grotesque imagery that is playing off at the same time in this film. There's just something about their style that I really enjoy, even if the movie doesn't fully work for me. And I do have a number of things that I'm going to get into here very shortly that didn't quite work for me with Bring Her Back. I'm excited to see what they're going to bring. And so whenever their inevitable 3rd film comes out, once again, I will be there day one with bells on. And the last thing I'll say here in the positives, I'm going to choose my words carefully because I am trying to be as vague as possible. I think walking into this film as blind as you can is the best approach. This film very clearly takes some inspiration from one of my favorite stories of all time. And the central theme to that story, in which I love, is also the central theme, the central kind of source of the horror of Bring Her Back. And I think it's a very effective theme to bring a lot of horror out of. I think there's a lot of inherent sympathy that comes out of it. I think it's a very easy situation to really prey on your emotions and really visualize grief and get you to buy into the lengths that certain people will go because of such grief, and for all the really over-the-top grotesque directions that they take that concept here, it's always grounded a bit by that very real, sympathetic exploration of grief that I think everybody can really identify with on some level. So maybe that entire segment makes no sense, and I apologize if it doesn't, but basically the point I'm getting at here is what they're going for with this film's central theme. I think they do a good job at conveying it. Moving on to The Mixed. This is one of those films that I think the ambiguity as far as the rules, as far as the lore, as far as the setup and the explanation for the things that we are seeing transpire on screen is going to be a bit of a win-lose scenario for a lot of people. And I'm very much on the fence, hence why it's here in The Mixed, because I don't know if the ambiguity causing a little bit of questions and making me feel like some things didn't quite add up, and I don't even know if the movie fully followed its own rules by the 3rd act, is just because I've only seen it once and I haven't experienced it enough times to like put the puzzle pieces together as effectively as a rewatch will allow me to do. Or if it's just genuinely one of those films that is playing very loose with its rules and doesn't explain a whole lot so that they can get away with that a little bit easier. Regardless, by the end of the film, there were a few things where I was like, I don't understand exactly how that worked. And it felt like you established that this is how things are going to go in the middle of the film and then kind of contradicted that a little bit in the last 5 minutes. Again, incredibly vague here, but it's a ambiguous style film with its lore, and that always brings some mixed reception for people. We have some that love coming up with those ideas themselves and having this whole playground where they get to fill in all the gaps with their own imagination. And then you have other people that want things spelled out a little bit more because they're much more logic based. And I tend to lean slightly towards that camp more times than not. Now moving on to the negatives, and I will tell you right now that Bring Her Back is not a film that completely came together for me. For all the things that I think it does really well, it really missed the mark in the third act and with a few central elements to me that kept it from being on the level of Talk to Me. And I do think it's going to be a very divisive film. I don't think this is going to be as widely acclaimed as Talk to Me. I think there's going to be people that love it, that widely prefer it over Talk to Me, and there's going to be some people that kind of lean more towards me, where some things worked and other things felt like missed opportunities. And I think that this film is also so punishingly bleak that there's going to be a number of people that just get absolutely turned off by it, and maybe even get turned off to these directors for how far they take things. But with that said, kind of listing off a few of my issues. First of all, something that doesn't really necessarily reflect on the film itself, but it's something that annoyed the living fuck out of me. As I already said, I think maybe twice now, I walk into this film with the valiant effort to go in as blind as possible. Did not look at a poster, did not read anything about it, did not want to talk to anybody about it, did not watch any of the trailers. And because this was a secret screening, there was this little, minute-long video intro by the Philippou Brothers whenever they started the actual film, where they're like, "Hey, it's us. You're going to see our new film, Bring Her Back, and we're the directors of Talk to Me." And then in one sentence, they kind of spoil their own film. Like, they basically gave like a one-sentence description of the film, and they took away the journey that you go on for like the first 45 minutes, that discovery journey of kind of slipping into this very grim situation and discovering for yourself what is actually going on. So kind of annoyed the fuck out of me that they did that. Like, everybody's got their own definitions of spoilers. Maybe some people would describe Bring Her Back the exact same way that they did. But for me, something that they said in there was just like, I didn't need to know that. I could have enjoyed discovering that throughout the journey that you intended me to go on with your film. You can look at the title, Bring Her Back. You can come to certain assumptions of what that title means, and most of us will probably be correct, but that wasn't even the description that they gave. So I don't know. I went out of my way when I described the plot of the film to be even more vague than the filmmakers did, which is just odd to me. And following up that point, I bring that up because I don't know if I can say this fairly or not. Like, I don't know if this point that was a little bit of an issue with the film for me is a result of the filmmakers giving me that synopsis, or if I would have come to the same conclusion without that intro. But one thing in this film that I felt like was a bit of a missed opportunity, when you have a story like this, where you have characters that are put in a seemingly normal situation that over time starts to show its head that it is absolutely abnormal and there's something very dark and sinister going on, I think those scenarios are most effective when you, as the audience member in the first act of the film, are also seduced into this situation the same way that the characters are, where you get this false sense of comfortability and you feel like these characters that they're mingling with are actually cool. And, you might know because it's a horror film, things are going to go bad at some point, but emotionally you're like, okay, this seems cool. This seems copacetic. This is a good situation to be in. And then later on throughout the film, you start to see little things where you're like, that's a little odd. That's a little peculiar. I don't know about that. I would start to ask questions about that, and that builds over the 3-act structure. This film, I feel like it shows its head immediately, where it's like, yeah, shit's fucked up. And so you don't really get to go on that journey with the characters. Immediately, you're just on the defense going, alarm bells, motherfucker. We're like, where's the red flags at? Why are you staying here? Get out. All that aside, this is a very slow burn film. This is a film that its pacing is going to test the patience of some. Now, I appreciate a slow burn if the story and the characters are really engaging and if it eventually pays off really well by the third act. Paying off by the third act, I think, is where this film suffers a little bit. But even with that said, it really does feel like this film is stretching its premise a little bit artificially. Like, there's something very simplistic about what they're going for here, and you kind of get the idea what's happening, at least by the halfway point, and then it really feels like the film is meandering a bit and really drawing out like this long execution of what is actually going to happen. And at points in the film, it did feel like we were spinning our wheels a little bit when we should have been getting to the point a little bit faster in the back half. Going along with that, just narratively, I think the slow burn pace that they went for kind of stretches some of the credibility of the actual story here. And again, I'm not going to get into any specifics, but when you start to learn what the actual plot is going on here, like what danger these two kids are in and what the person who is putting them in danger plans to do, it kind of starts to have your wheels turning about like, how did you exactly plan for this to go? Like, what exactly was the order of events that you were trying to have transpire here? How did you think you were going to get away with this? And why did you not go for a much quicker and simpler execution of this plan that seems much more sensical? So it's almost one of those things where to have a full-length film, you have to have these elements in there, but stretching it out to full length kind of strains a little credibility of the concept a bit in my mind. I also feel that, despite the fact I think the gore effects are very impressive, they're very effective. They're some of the nastiest shit that I've seen in the theater this year. And you guys know I love the carnage candy, so I'm never going to complain about gore in a horror film. But I do think because of the serious tone of this film and the fact that they are trying to do something that is, quote unquote prestigious. This is not like an exploitation style film that's there just for the Splatfest. I think some of the more grisly images and grisly sequences in this film felt a little bit unearned narratively. You had to have characters do something incredibly stupid and incredibly out of character to set up the scenario, to have these gore effects in a few spots. Like there's literally a sequence where the main character, Andy, does something that's like, why in God's name would you ever do that? What do you think is going to happen? And then exactly what your first instinct of what could happen starts to happen. And so you look at this and you're like, okay, yeah, that was nasty as fuck to see, but that would have never happened. So you only had that character behave in that stupid way so that you could pay it off with a gore effect. To me, that's unearned. But my biggest issue with Bring Her Back that unfortunately dropped my enjoyment of the film significantly by the time the credits rolled is that I really didn't care for how this movie wrapped up. I think that the last 15 minutes or so of this film kind of betrayed the rest of the film in a certain way. You're following a certain character arc, you're following this story, you have certain expectations set about how things are going to go. And then the film makes a choice in its last 15 minutes to go a certain direction that really didn't feel like it was set up at all and was not an organic way for this story or these characters to go in the third act. And it very much felt like it dispenses what I was truly invested in and what I would imagine a lot of people are going to be truly invested in with this film. And, it sets you up in a spot where you're immediately defensive going, okay, you better have something in store to really pay this off and to make this feel justified by the end. Otherwise, I don't know why you did this. And unfortunately, by the time you get the title sequence and the credits rolling, I never felt like they did that. It really felt like the film petered out quite literally in the final act. And, even tonally, it felt kind of out of balance with everything else. For a film that's so unrelentingly bleak and dark and twisted, it kind of felt like they wanted to try to bring in some other tones there. And I just don't think it worked. I think they did it too late in the film, and it didn't really have any proper setup earlier on to merit us kind of taking a little bit of a detour, if you will, narratively with where this film goes. So I did not enjoy at all the ending. I did not enjoy at all what they did with some of the characters, and it left me very cold and unsatisfied by the time that the film was over. I never really like playing this game because I don't like feeling like, oh, I'm smarter than these filmmakers, because clearly I'm not. These guys are pretty masterful with what they do. But even just talking with a couple of friends, one that loved this movie, one that kind of fell on the same lines that I did, even just in our discussions, we were talking about the directions that we were thinking it was going to go. And all of our ideas of where we thought things were going to go, all were more interesting to me than what actually happened in the third act of this film. So that's never a good feeling to have, where, you're just spitballing on the drive home and you're like, yeah, that would have brought this up a whole star for me if it had done this. In fact, you know what? I get bugged all to hell when I do a review that's so vague like this and I have very specific ideas that I want to discuss. So right now I'm going to talk about the ending of this film. So I'm going to throw a spoiler warning up here. If you've not seen the film, please do not watch this. Just fast forward to my ranking, or, check out and go watch the movie and then come back. But, my issue is that for me, the second that they killed off Andy, the second that he gets hit by the car and then Sally Hawkins comes over and drowns him in that puddle, for me, that's where my enjoyment of this movie really fell off a cliff. To me, this entire film was all on that character's shoulders. It was about his redemption. It was about his guilt about, you know, his generational trauma from his father's abuse and how he almost started to go down that same path with his sister, and about him trying to be her protector and save her from any kind of pain whatsoever. And to me, when you kill off that character, you completely snuff out, literally, that entire building character arc. And now we're just left with, you know, the very sympathetic character of Piper, but the one that we have not spent anywhere near as much time establishing or really, you know, getting some kind of a character arc with, just basically watching whether or not she survives or not. And so you're just kind of following her around as she's trying to get away from Sally Hawkins for the last 15 minutes. And to me, that was just not a satisfying way to resolve this story at all. And what I thought they were going to do, because this film was so dark and bleak and unforgiving from Jump Street, I thought what they were going to do, because they established the rule that in order to have her daughter's soul come back and go into a new body, that person has to die the same way, which was drowning. Since she drowned Andy, what I assumed was probably going to happen, to follow with that very fucked up, unforgiving tone, was that at some point in the last 15 minutes in her pursuit of Piper, she was going to accidentally kill Piper, or Piper was going to, you know, run off a cliff or do something because of her vision impairment. And now, fuck, my plan A vessel's gone. And we were going to end the film with her putting her daughter's soul into Andy because he died by drowning. And if they had went that way, this film would have gone up probably an entire star for me, because that would have felt like a very bleak but appropriate end to the story and his character. He dies, so it's still sad, it's still dark, it's still fucked up. His sister, he did not literally save because she's dead, but he saved her from the fate of being this vessel and being, you know, kind of like in the sunken place, like get out, by kind of becoming the vessel himself. Like, to me, that felt like an appropriate ending to this story. And so when you get, basically, he's just dead, and now we're just going to chase around Piper around this house for the last 10 minutes, and then Sally Hawkins' character is going to have an attack of conscience suddenly out of nowhere in the pool and just die in the pool with her daughter. Like, to me, it felt like they were trying to twist the movie's tone in the last 5 minutes and go for a more hopeful-ish type of ending. And it felt out of place. It felt like, instead of them actually earning a more hopeful ending, and, you know, not even going the direction that I was pitching, but doing something else, instead of earning that hopeful ending, it kind of felt like more of a cop-out. And I don't know if that was them. I don't know if it was the studio. Maybe they had an ending in place originally, and they were like, this is too fucked up. Like, we're not going to get an R rating. Nobody's going to like this. You have to have some bit of relief in here, because Jesus Christ, like, that might have happened, but I just was not satisfied with the way that they decided to end this film. It soured a lot of the experience for me. You know, I can forgive a lot of the other issues that I had pretty easily if you tell a great story, like they did with Talk to Me. Talk to Me has a bleak ending, but it's earned. Here, I just didn't think it was a satisfying ending at all. It left me very cold. All in all, guys, I liked Bring Her Back. I do think that it is worth checking out, especially if you're a fan of these two directors. I would like to watch it again and give it a second shot. Maybe it'll work a little bit better for me. I do think that it is a very effectively bleak and, you know, kind of miserable movie in the best way, but I just wish that it culminated in a way that was much more satisfying narratively for me, and some of the gore effects were a little bit more earned. Those are my two biggest issues. But overall, if you're a Philippou Brothers fan, if you love Talk to Me the way that I did, absolutely check it out. You might enjoy it even more than I did. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, click over here for all of my 2025 new release reviews. I'm also going to stick my review of Talk to Me up here if you want to see my thoughts on that film. Spoiler alert, I loved it. Like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.